Dr. Jessica Miller's coffee had long gone cold, forgotten on her cluttered desk at NASA's Johnson Space Center as she studied the latest images from the Mars excavation. The morning sun streamed through her office window, casting long shadows across stacks of research papers and artifact analyses. 20 years of studying potential extraterrestrial archaeological sites had taught her patience, but these new findings made her hands tremble with excitement. The patterns were unmistakable. The ruins weren't random. They held a mathematical precision that couldn't have occurred naturally. Her office phone buzzed. "Dr. Miller, you might want to turn on the news." Her assistant's voice wavered with an unfamiliar edge. Jessica reached for her remote, and CNN flickered to life on her wall screen. The coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor as she stared at the live footage. Massive ships, each one easily dwarfing the world's largest cities, had appeared in Earth's orbit. They seemed to defy physics itself, their crystalline structures refracting sunlight in impossible ways. "This is not a drill or a hoax," the news anchor's voice cracked. "We are receiving reports of similar vessels appearing over every major city worldwide. The president will be addressing the nation in..." The broadcast cut out. Every screen, every device, every digital display worldwide simultaneously switched to the same image. A towering figure with iridescent scales and multiple sets of eyes. High Lord Zixtal of the Galactic Empire spoke, his words automatically translating in everyone's minds through some unknown technology. "People of Earth," his voice resonated with ancient authority, "your isolation ends today. For 10 millennia, the Galactic Empire has brought order and prosperity to civilizations across the stars. Your species has been deemed sufficiently advanced for integration. You have 30 Earth rotations to accept our generous offer of membership. The alternative," he paused, his multiple eyes blinking in sequence, "would be unfortunate." Jessica barely registered the chaos erupting outside her window. Her mind raced back to the Mars findings. With trembling hands, she pulled up the latest scan results on her tablet. The patterns in the ruins, they weren't just mathematical. They were a message. Her phone rang again. This time, it was General Richardson from the Pentagon. "Dr. Miller, please tell me you have something, anything, that might help us understand what we're dealing with." "Sir," she swallowed hard, "I think the Mars ruins were left as a warning. The symbols we found, they're not alien. They're proto-human script, at least 300,000 years old." Silence filled the line. "The message," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "it's crude, but clear. They will return. Be ready. General, I don't think this is first contact. I think this is a reunion. And not the happy kind." "Explain." The general's voice was tense. "The ruins suggest our ancestors fought them before, sir." And she studied another image. "They left us something. Coordinates buried deep in the facility. We need to send a team immediately. You have 1 hour, Doctor. Whatever's there, we need it now." As Jessica grabbed her emergency gear, a notification popped up on her tablet. The excavation team had just discovered a chamber, sealed for hundreds of millennia. Inside, they found weapons, not primitive tools, but advanced technology, preserved in perfect condition. And on the wall, a final message that made her blood run cold. "They think themselves gods. Show them humans can kill gods." Looking up at the massive ships through her window, Jessica felt a strange calm settle over her. Humanity had faced this threat before, and they'd obviously won. The Empire, in all its arrogance, had forgotten about Earth. But Earth, it seemed, had never truly forgotten about them. She pulled out her phone to call the general back. They had work to do, and this time, humanity wouldn't start from scratch. Their ancestors had left them everything they needed. They just had to be smart enough to use it. The Empire had given Earth 30 days to surrender. They would soon learn that was their first mistake. Colonel James Mad Dog Walker strode into the emergency United Nations session, his combat boots echoing through the suddenly silent chamber. 29 days had passed since the Empire's ultimatum, and Earth's response was due in less than 12 hours. The Colonel's weathered face bore a slight smirk that made several diplomats shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, setting down a metallic briefcase that hummed with an odd frequency, "I'm here to tell you why we've maintained radio silence for 29 days, and why the Empire's deadline is the best damn news we've had in centuries." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Chinese ambassador stood up. "Colonel, with all due respect, their ships could destroy our major cities in minutes. What could possibly be good about this situation?" Walker's smirk widened as he opened the briefcase. A hologram sprang to life, showing classified footage from military installations worldwide. "Because, Mr. Ambassador, we've been preparing for this day since before we invented the wheel." Dr. Miller's Mars discovery was just the beginning. A hologram shifted to Area 51. For 70 years, people thought we were reverse engineering crashed UFOs. The truth. He pressed a button, revealing massive underground hangars filled with advanced weaponry. We were building weapons based on genetic memory. Fragments of knowledge passed down through generations, surfacing in our dreams, our stories, our science fiction. "Impossible," the Russian representative interjected. "Is it?" Walker pulled out a copy of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. Wells described energy weapons decades before lasers were invented. Arthur C. Clarke detailed satellite technology before Sputnik. Every major science fiction writer of the past century was unknowingly tapping into humanity's cellular memory of our first war with the Empire. We weren't imagining the future. We were remembering our past. The hologram changed again, showing testing footage of quantum-shielded fighters, antimatter torpedoes, and gravity manipulation devices. "Everything you see here works. We've been building arsenals like this in every major nation, driven by an instinct we couldn't explain until now. The Empire didn't find a primitive species today. They found an entire planet that's been secretly preparing for round 2. The Secretary General leaned forward. "Colonel, are you suggesting we fight?" "I'm suggesting we show them exactly who they're dealing with." Walker pressed another button. The chamber's lights dimmed as a new presentation began. "This is humanity's response to their ultimatum." The video started with Leonidas and the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. It shifted to Alexander's outnumbered forces defeating the Persian Empire, then to the American Revolution's militia standing against the British Empire. Vietnam, Afghanistan. Countless examples of determined forces defeating technologically superior enemies. The footage continued through human history, showcasing humanity's relentless spirit against overwhelming odds. "We're the only species they've encountered that perfected the art of defeating empires before reaching the stars," Walker declared. "While they'd grown comfortable with their technological superiority, we've spent millennia learning how to tear down powers like them." The final images showed Earth's combined military forces, vast underground bases, hidden fleets, weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Our response to their ultimatum. This. The screen filled with a simple message. "We would rather die free than live as slaves. Your move." Walker closed the briefcase as the lights came up. "The Empire thinks they're being generous, giving us a choice between surrender or conquest. I say we give them a third option, showing them why picking a fight with humanity was the biggest mistake their empire has made in 10,000 years. The chamber erupted in fierce applause. Even the traditionally cautious diplomats felt it, a burning recognition of humanity's true nature awakening in their blood. They weren't just fighting for Earth, they were fighting to remind the galaxy why their ancestors had been feared among the stars. As the Security Council unanimously approved the response, Walker's secure phone buzzed. Dr. Miller's text was brief. "Ancient weapons facility activated. Everything works. They won't know what hit them." The colonel smiled, watching Earth's message transmit toward the Imperial fleet. In 12 hours, the Empire would learn why humans were the only species in known space who had nuclear weapons before achieving faster-than-light travel. They weren't primitive. They were prepared. Major Rebecca Ghost Hawkins sat in the cockpit of her X-89 Phantom, humanity's best-kept secret for the past 15 years. The quantum-cloaked fighter, sleek and deadly, had been designed for a war everyone felt coming but couldn't explain until now. Her squadron of 30 pilots, call sign Wraithwing, waited in the darkness of the moon's far side, watching their tactical displays as the Imperial fleet began its approach. All units, radio check. Ghost's voice was steady, masking the adrenaline coursing through her veins. One by one, her pilots responded. Former Top Gun instructors, Red Flag veterans, the best of the best from every Air Force on Earth. Target fleet approaching lunar orbit, the AI combat system announced. 100 vessels detected. Classification: 98 destroyer class, 2 dreadnought-class command ships. Ghost allowed herself a small smile. Just like the simulations. Remember your training. They're expecting conventional space warfare. Show them why human pilots are considered clinically insane by their standards. The Imperial fleet moved with mathematical precision, their formation perfect and utterly predictable. Their automated combat systems had been refined over thousands of years, programmed with every known combat doctrine in the galaxy. The problem was, they'd forgotten about Earth. Wraithwing. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Weapons free. 30 Phantoms accelerated from their hiding spots, their quantum cloaking making them invisible to even the Empire's advanced sensors. Ghost led the first attack run, her fighter diving through the Imperial formation at speeds that would have liquefied any other species pilot. The G-force dampeners, reverse-engineered from the Mars facility, were the only thing keeping her conscious. Fox 3, she called out, releasing her first salvo. The antimatter torpedoes, designed by Dr. Miller's team, phased through the Imperial shields as if they weren't there. The first destroyer erupted in a spectacular explosion, its debris taking out 2 neighboring ships. Imperial Captain Drellixon watched in horror from his command bridge as explosions bloomed across his fleet. Impossible. Their technology is primitive. They haven't even achieved FTL travel. Multiple hostile contacts. His sensor officer screamed. They're pulling maneuvers that violate the laws of physics. Ghost's voice crackled across all Imperial frequencies, courtesy of their decoded communications. Welcome to Earth, where our pilots do the impossible before breakfast. Wraithwing struck like lightning, their attacks defying every combat doctrine in the Imperial manual. They flew through debris fields that should have shredded their ships, executed turns that should have killed their pilots, and somehow appeared inside Imperial shields before their point defense systems could react. 60% of fleet remaining, the Imperial AI reported clinically. Tactical analysis. Enemy forces are employing unknown technology and illogical combat methods. Another explosion rocked Drellixon's ship. Illogical. They're insane. No rational species flies like this. Ghost led her squadron through the heart of the Imperial formation, their fighters dancing between capital ships like vengeful spirits. The Empire's automated targeting systems couldn't track pilots who deliberately flew in ways their programming considered unsurvivable. This is Ghost to home base. Phase 1 complete. Enemy fleet is scattered. Moving to Phase 2. Dr. Miller's voice responded from Earth Command. Confirmed. Ghost. Luna base missiles are hot. Give them hell. The moon's surface suddenly erupted as hidden missile silos, dormant for centuries, revealed themselves. Thousands of warheads, each powered by technology that humanity had been refining in secret, streaked toward the disorganized Imperial fleet. Captain Drellixon watched his tactical display in disbelief as his fleet disintegrated around him. Full retreat. Send warning to Imperial Command. Humans are not primitive. Repeat. Humans are. His transmission cut off as Ghost's final torpedo found its mark. The Imperial captain's last thought was wondering how his empire had so drastically underestimated this pre-FTL species. Ghost watched the remaining Imperial ships flee in disarray, their perfect formation shattered, their tactical doctrine proven worthless against human ingenuity and what they called reckless piloting. "Wraithwing, form up," she ordered, her squadron regrouping around her. "Let's head home. Something tells me this was just the warm-up round." As they flew back to Earth, Ghost couldn't help but smile. The Empire had expected to face primitive weapons and basic space combat. Instead, they'd learned their first lesson about humanity. Never mistake preparation for primitiveness. The real war was just beginning. Commander Jack MacGyver Thompson stood in the captured Imperial Dreadnought's engine room, surrounded by his team of engineers and one very confused Roomba. The vacuum robot, heavily modified with parts from a PlayStation 5 and covered in duct tape, beeped happily as it mapped the alien vessel's internal layout. "Sir," Lieutenant Sarah Cooper called out, her hands deep in an opened Imperial control panel, "you're not actually going to hack their systems with a gaming controller, are you?" Thompson grinned, pulling out a modified dual-sense controller that glowed with an otherworldly blue light. The Empire spent thousands of years developing perfect technology. Know what they forgot to account for? Human creativity. He plugged the controller into the panel Cooper had opened, and the fact that teenagers have been hacking gaming systems since the 1980s. The Dreadnought's lights flickered as Thompson's jury-rigged interface came online. Dr. Miller's voice crackled through their comms. "Commander, you have 15 minutes before their reinforcements arrive. Please tell me you found something useful." "Better," Thompson replied, his fingers dancing across the controller's buttons. "We found their entire technical database. And you won't believe this. Their advanced systems are running on crystalline quantum computers that work almost exactly like our PlayStation neural network. Someone at Sony had some serious genetic memory when they designed that." The Roomba chirped, projecting a holographic map of the ship. Thompson's team had already identified critical systems, marking them with icons from various video games, a detail that would have horrified the Empire's engineers. "Getting cocky, MacGyver?" Miller asked, concern evident in her voice. "No, ma'am. Getting creative. Cooper, show them what we did to their coffee maker." Cooper held up what looked like an Imperial food synthesizer, now wrapped in copper wire and humming ominously. "We reversed the quantum field generator. It's now a tactical fusion bomb. Turns out their perfect technology is really just carefully controlled chaos, and chaos is humanity's specialty." Thompson's controller buzzed as Imperial code poured through the neural interface. "They designed these ships to be unhackable by any known species. But humans, we've been breaking into unhackable systems since we invented computers. Their security is good, but it never had to deal with someone who grew up playing Dark Souls." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Imperial reinforcements dropping out of FTL," Miller warned. "Time to go." "Not yet." Thompson's eyes gleamed as he executed his final command sequence. "Remember how their ships are all networked for optimal efficiency. Watch this." He pressed the controller's share button. Throughout the Imperial fleet, coffee makers began to transform into fusion bombs. Entertainment systems turned into cyber warfare platforms. Cleaning robots became saboteurs. The Empire's perfectly designed technology turned against itself, corrupted by human ingenuity and what Thompson called the sacred art of making stuff work with duct tape. Multiple detonations detected in the Imperial fleet, Miller reported, a hint of awe in her voice. "Their ships are. They're fighting each other." "Thompson, what did you do?" "Introduced their network to the concept of gaming mods," he grinned, disconnecting his controller. "Ghost's team proved we could outfly them. I just proved we can outhack them. Cooper, leave our friend for them to find." Cooper placed the modified Roomba in the engine room, its tiny speaker now playing "Never Gonna Give You Up" on loop. She attached a note that read, "Thanks for the ship. P.S. Your coffee maker makes a great bomb." As Thompson's team evacuated in their stealth shuttles, they watched the Imperial fleet descend into chaos. Ships fired on their own allies, systems crashed, and through it all, that single Roomba continued mapping the Dreadnought, occasionally stopping to clean up debris. Back at Earth Command, Dr. Miller watched the sensor feeds in amazement. "Commander, I don't know whether to promote you or have you psychiatrically evaluated." "Why not both?" Thompson laughed, pulling out another gaming controller. "By the way, wait until you see what we can do with their quantum targeting systems and a modded Nintendo Switch." The Empire had expected to face primitive technology. Instead, they learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their hidden arsenal. It was their ability to turn anything into a weapon, guided by centuries of breaking into systems they weren't supposed to access. And they were just getting started. Lieutenant Michael Spectre O'Connor crouched in the shadows of Imperial City's maintenance tunnels on Proxima VI, watching alien pedestrians through a crack in the surface. His team of former Special Forces operators, Navy SEALs, SAS, Spetsnaz, and others, had spent 3 weeks infiltrating the Empire's supposedly impenetrable core worlds. "Sierra Actual, this is Ghost One." His neural comm implant picked up. "We've finished reprogramming their wildlife control grid. You won't believe what these guys keep as pets." O'Connor smiled. The Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, but had never encountered Earth's unique approach to asymmetric warfare. "Copy that. Prowler 2, status on the psychological package." "You're going to love this, boss," came the response from Sarah Whisper Rodriguez, former CIA psychological operations expert. "We've seeded their local networks with footage from every haunted house movie ever made, modified to feature their own species. Added some choice selections from Japanese horror films, too." The lieutenant checked his captured Imperial chronometer. "Perfect timing. Execute Operation Poltergeist." Across the Imperial capital, carefully planted devices activated. Holographic projectors, reprogrammed with scenes from Earth's most terrifying ghost stories, began creating supernatural phenomena that specifically targeted Imperial psychological weak points. Their species had never developed horror stories or ghost tales. They had no cultural defense against humanity's millennia of crafting terror. Prowler 3, release the specimens. In the city's underground levels, Jessica Beastmaster Chen's voice crackled with barely contained glee. "Releasing now. These gene-spliced creatures are something else. Mixed their native wildlife with Earth species. Ever wondered what happens when you combine their guard beasts with honey badger DNA?" O'Connor didn't have to wonder long. Chaos erupted across the capital as the modified creatures, enhanced with Earth's most aggressive animal traits, launched coordinated attacks on Imperial security systems. But these weren't just random attacks. Each creature had been programmed with tactical objectives based on centuries of guerrilla warfare doctrine. Sierra 2, initiate social disruption protocols. Throughout the city's entertainment districts, every screen suddenly began broadcasting footage from Earth's resistance movements. The French Resistance, the American Revolution, Vietnam, Afghanistan. Centuries of successful insurgencies against superior forces, subtitled in Imperial Standard. "This is getting interesting," Whisper reported. Local security forces are evacuating entire sectors. They're reporting supernatural phenomena. "Looks like our ghost stories are working better than expected." O'Connor watched as an Imperial security patrol ran screaming from what appeared to be a vengeful spirit, but was actually a clever combination of holograms and sound effects inspired by Japanese Yurei legends. Apparently, a species that never developed ghost stories has no defense against them either. "Sierra Actual, you need to see this," Ghost One cut in. "The modified creatures have breached their primary security grid, but instead of attacking, they're displaying tactical behaviors. One group is actually setting up a defensive perimeter using Imperial protocols against them." "Honey badger DNA," O'Connor chuckled. "Nature's own special forces." The operation reached its crescendo as all of their attacks synchronized. Imperial forces faced what appeared to be supernatural phenomena, tactically intelligent wildlife, and a suddenly aware civilian population learning about successful rebellions for the first time in their history. "All units, Phase 2, O'Connor commanded. Release the data package." Across every Imperial network, classified documents began appearing. Proof of Imperial atrocities, suppressed histories, and tactical weaknesses. But more importantly, detailed guides on Earth's most successful resistance tactics, translated into every subject species language. "Sir," Whisper's voice held a note of amazement, "we're getting responses. Not just here, across 12 sectors. Other species are asking for more information about Earth's resistance techniques." O'Connor stood, dusting off his stealth suit. "Send them everything." The Empire spent 10,000 years making sure no species developed military doctrine that could threaten them. Time to introduce the galaxy to humanity's greatest export, the art of revolution. As his team extracted under cover of the chaos they'd created, O'Connor couldn't help but admire the irony. The Empire had expected to face primitive rebels on one world. Instead, they'd just unknowingly hosted a masterclass in Earth's guerrilla warfare techniques, broadcast to every oppressed species in their territory. The revolution wouldn't just be televised. It would be weaponized. Admiral Emily "Iron Lady" Winters stood on the bridge of the U.S. Enterprise II, watching tactical displays as reports flooded in from across Imperial space. The Empire had finally decided to deploy their planet killer fleet, 15 massive vessels specifically designed to obliterate resistant worlds. What they didn't know was that humanity had been waiting for this moment. "All cells, this is Iron Lady," she broadcast across their quantum-encrypted network. "Operation Ragnarok is go. I say again, Ragnarok is go." Across Imperial space, seemingly innocent civilian vessels suddenly transformed. A luxury cruise ship filled with tourists, actually former Navy SEALs, revealed hidden weapon systems. A cargo freighter piloted by rodeo champions from Texas activated experimental gravitational lances. Even a small passenger shuttle, crewed by what appeared to be peaceful merchants, but were actually former NASCAR drivers, became a high-speed assault craft. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "Cell 7 is engaging the first planet killer. They're using modified cattle prods." Winters smiled. That would be the rodeo team. Turns out the same skills used for wrangling bulls work surprisingly well on Imperial ships. Their shields never expect something to just lasso them. The tactical display showed the impossible. A massive Imperial planet killer being effectively hogged by energy lassos wielded by cowboys in spacesuits. Their leader, Buck Martinez, had insisted that a ship's just a real big bull when you think about it. "Cell 12 reporting success," another officer called out. "The Vegas team They just convinced an entire Imperial crew that their ship was a casino and now own it in a poker game." "Never bet against card counters," Winters noted, "especially ones trained in psychological warfare." The Empire's response was pure chaos. Their rigid command structure, designed to handle conventional warfare, completely fell apart when faced with humanity's mix of improvised tactics and specialized skills turned into weapons. "Multiple detonations detected," Tactical reported. "Cell 3, the Demolition Derby team, just took out 2 planet killers by introducing them to the Piet maneuver in space." Winters watched as former street racers and stunt drivers turned space warfare into something that looked more like a fast and furious movie. Imperial ships, designed for calculated, mathematical combat, had no protocols for dealing with opponents who treated space combat like a monster truck rally. Cell 9 requesting permission to execute Operation Rogers, Communications announced. "Granted," Winters responded. "Let's see how the Empire handles some good old-fashioned piracy." A group of former Coast Guard officers, led by a descendant of the infamous Blackbeard, began implementing historical pirate tactics against Imperial supply lines. Their modified vessels, painted with skull and crossbones, introduced the concept of space piracy to a galaxy that had never imagined such a thing possible. "Ma'am," her XO interrupted, "the Empire is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're demanding to know how a pre-FTL civilization learned to fight like this." Winters keyed the comm. This is Admiral Winters to Imperial Command. You spent 10,000 years perfecting space warfare. We spent 10,000 years perfecting every possible way to fight dirty. Consider this a cultural exchange. The displays showed more Imperial ships falling to increasingly absurd tactics. A team of professional wrestlers had somehow body-slammed a destroyer. Olympic gymnasts were using their vessels to perform maneuvers that made Imperial targeting systems crash trying to calculate their trajectories. A group of professional stage magicians had convinced 3 Imperial crews that their ships had vanished. Status update. Winters commanded. 11 planet killers neutralized. 2 captured intact. Apparently the poker team is on a winning streak. 1 being towed away by the rodeo team. And the last. She paused, checking her readings. The last one just surrendered after the magicians convinced them their ship had turned into a giant space rabbit. Winters leaned back in her command chair, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. The Empire had built their planet killers expecting to face primitive weapons and basic tactics. Instead, they discovered that humanity's greatest weapon was their ability to turn any skill, no matter how seemingly useless, into a tool of warfare. Send word to all cells, she ordered. Phase 2 begins in 30 minutes. Let's show them what happens when we start getting creative. The Empire was about to learn why humans were the only species that turned professional sports into combat training. General William Wild Bill Harrison stood before an unlikely audience. Representatives from 30 different alien species gathered in a hidden asteroid base designated Fort Bunker Hill. The holographic displays behind him showed footage from Earth's most successful revolutions and resistance movements. The Empire told you rebellion was impossible. Harrison's voice carried across the chamber. They made you believe their technological superiority made resistance futile. But let me show you something they never wanted you to see. The display shifted to footage from the American Revolution. Farmers and merchants defeated the most powerful military force of their time. How? He paused, letting the question hang. Because they wanted freedom more than their opponents wanted control. A crystalline being floated forward, its facets reflecting the holographic light. But we are not human. We have no weapons, no warriors. My species evolved to float peacefully in gas giants. Harrison grinned. Perfect. You just described the Viet Cong before they became one of the most effective guerrilla forces in human history. Let me show you how your natural abilities are actually perfect for asymmetric warfare. Over the next hour, Harrison demonstrated how each species' unique traits could become tactical advantages. The crystalline beings learned how their natural ability to refract light made them perfect for disrupting Imperial targeting systems. A species of 6 armed maintenance workers discovered their skill at rapid repair work, translated perfectly to sabotage. Sir, his aide interrupted, incoming transmission from the Proxima sector. The main display lit up with footage that made every alien in the room freeze in awe. The crystalline beings had successfully recreated Washington's crossing of the Delaware in an asteroid field. Their natural ability to navigate in 3 dimensions had turned a historical Earth tactic into a devastating space warfare strategy. 60 Imperial ships neutralize, the crystalline leader reported, its facets glowing with pride. They never saw us coming. Their sensors couldn't distinguish us from normal space debris until it was too late. Harrison turned to the maintenance worker species. Your turn. Show them what you learned from the French resistance. The footage shifted to an Imperial shipyard. The 6 armed workers had transformed their repair knowledge into an art form of strategic sabotage. Ships launched only to have key systems fail at critical moments, their crews never suspecting the maintenance checks were actually carefully planned acts of rebellion. 3 more sectors reporting successful operations, his aide announced. The methane-breathing species adapted the Boston Tea Party economic warfare tactics. They're disrupting Imperial fuel supplies. The hive-mind insects have practically perfected Viet Cong tunnel warfare, but in asteroid belts. A low-gravity species that evolved on small moons demonstrated how they'd adapted Native American guerrilla tactics to space warfare. Their natural ability to operate in minimal gravity made them lethal in asteroid fields and ship-to-ship combat. This is why the Empire feared Earth, Harrison explained as more success reports flooded in. Not because of our technology, but because we perfected the art of teaching others to resist. Every human revolution, every resistance movement, every successful uprising, they're all just lessons waiting to be taught. The chamber erupted in what passed for cheering among the various species as more victories were reported. A species of natural mimics had adapted the ghost dance tactics to wage psychological warfare. Beings that communicated through color changes were using their abilities to create confusion and chaos in Imperial ranks. The Empire spent 10,000 years making sure no species developed the ability to fight back. Harrison's voice carried over the celebration. They never imagined one planet's history of resistance could become a textbook for the galaxy. His aide rushed in with another update. "Sir, Imperial forces are reporting widespread rebellions across 12 sectors. They're calling it the human plague, the spread of resistance tactics across their territory." Harrison watched the tactical displays show more and more Imperial systems erupting in carefully coordinated rebellion. Each species had taken Earth's lessons and adapted them to their own unique abilities, creating a form of warfare the Empire had never conceived possible. "Send word to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them Phase 7 is complete. The galaxy is ready for its first lesson in democracy." The Empire had forgotten one crucial detail about humans. They don't just fight oppression. They teach others to do the same. Ambassador Cape Checkmate Rodriguez sat across from High Lord Zixtal aboard the U.S. Constitution, the ancient wooden warship now retrofitted with quantum drives and hovering in Earth orbit. Between them, a holographic chessboard displayed a game that had been ongoing throughout the negotiations. Like the war itself, it had not gone as the Empire expected. "Your terms are unprecedented." Zixtal's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of stress Rodriguez had learned to recognize. "Complete autonomy for all species. Equal representation. The Empire has stood for 10,000 years on the principle of hierarchical order." Rodriguez moved her knight, taking another of Zixtal's pieces. "And how's that working out for you?" "Last I checked, 37 systems declared independence this morning, using tactics that, I believe, they learned from Earth's Haitian Revolution." The High Lord's scales shifted color slightly, the equivalent of a human pallor. On the tactical displays surrounding them, hundreds of Imperial worlds pulsed with rebellion. Each one represented a different species applying Earth's revolutionary history in unique ways. Perhaps, Zixtal moved his bishop, falling into the trap Rodriguez had spent hours setting up. Perhaps there is wisdom in adaptation. But surely you understand the chaos this could cause. "Chaos?" Rodriguez smiled, her fingers ghosting over her queen. "High Lord, let me share something about human history. Every major advance in our civilization came from what others called chaos. Democracy started with rebellion. Civil rights, born from resistance. Scientific revolution challenged the established order. Through the Constitution's windows, Earth gleamed blue and peaceful, a stark contrast to the reports streaming in from across Imperial space. The crystalline beings had just liberated their homeworld using tactics learned from the American Underground Railroad. The maintenance worker species had turned their entire sector into what they proudly called Space Vietnam. "Check," Rodriguez announced, her queen sliding into position. "You're down to 2 moves, both of them fatal. Just like your empire." Zixtal studied the board, his ancient eyes finally seeing the pattern. Every move he'd made, thinking it safe and conservative, had actually contributed to his own defeat. Just like every action the Empire had taken against Earth had only spread the seeds of revolution further. "The choice is simple," Rodriguez continued, pulling up the terms of surrender, or as Earth called it, the Galactic Constitution. "Sign this. Help us establish a true galactic federation based on equality and self-determination. Or," she gestured to the tactical displays, "watch your empire fall system by system." General Harrison has already trained resistance cells in 60% of your territories. Admiral Winters has neutralized your planet-killer fleet with tactics borrowed from rodeo champions and stage magicians. Dr. Miller's archaeological teams keep finding more ancient human weapons caches on supposedly empty worlds. The High Lord reached out with one scaled hand, then hesitated. And if we agree, what guarantees do we have that humans won't simply take control themselves? Rodriguez's laugh was genuine. High Lord, if we wanted an empire, we would have built one ourselves. Humanity's greatest strength isn't conquest. It's teaching others to be free. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to help it govern itself. She moved her final piece. Checkmate. Both on the board, and I think in reality. Zixtel stared at the board, seeing his defeat in both games, chess and war. With deliberate ceremony, he pressed his seal into the document. The Galactic Constitution was signed on humanity's oldest commissioned warship, a wooden vessel that had seen America's own fight for freedom. Welcome, Rodriguez said, extending her hand in Earth's traditional greeting, to the first day of true galactic democracy. As the news spread across space, celebrations erupted on countless worlds. Species that had never known freedom began drafting their own constitutions, many proudly including phrases borrowed from Earth's historical documents. The Empire's first war with humans became its last war ever. Not because humanity destroyed it, but because they transformed it into something better. The galaxy learned that humans weren't just warriors. They were teachers, revolutionaries, and most importantly, champions of freedom. In the end, the Empire's greatest mistake wasn't underestimating humanity's military might. It was failing to understand that humans' most powerful weapon was never their technology or tactics. It was their unshakable belief that everyone deserves to be free.